This is it. This is live. This is the show.
We are here. What is up, everyone?
What is up?
Welcome to the Rolling Funny Nut Theorios.
Dude, check your show, man.
You it up. You're not on the right show right now.
Shameless plug. We'll get to that. That's at the end, right?
Yeah, we end with plugs.
Yeah.
No worries there.
All right,
this
so
is
we're
Funny Nut
finishing up
Theorios. Yeah. There we go. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Run
the topic of the show is try and finish up some Charlie Manson.
Yeah.
Old Charlie.
And his relation to MK Ultra. And then we kind of got a question for chat as far as do y'all want to watch State of the Union or not? Because I'm interested. It's kind of part of the show. Let's go make fun of Biden a little bit. Especially because the last one was all red and like demonic looking and stuff. But, one in the chat if you want to live commentate the State of the Union.
I mean, worst case scenario, we could probably just kind of 1-2. That is so indecisive. We'll at least pull it up on the sideline and have it going. We don't have to actively be commentating on it, but
we can definitely make fun of Biden, though.
Something happens. If I can get a screenshot of his face or something, that's worth it. While Clayton is lagging out of control, it is going to be worth mentioning that Clayton is out of town, so this will be an out-of-town show for Clayton, so his internet is subpar, just full disclosure. And here in town locally, Drake and I are in the middle of a thunderstorm, so if we have more technical difficulties, blame it on Mother Nature.
Yes.
Yes.
Clayton, are you back?
Holy shit. Nope.
Okay, how about you stop talking and I'll take the wheel.
Yeah. So real quick, Drake, this is it was supposed to be it wasn't designed to be a two-parter, but the main focus of the MK Ultra Manson stuff was supposed to be Manson. Last week we covered MK Ultra pretty extensively, I would say. So this is the two-parter. So if you missed the MK Ultra episode, this is live, so watch this, obviously. But definitely catch up on last week's episode. There was a lot of relevant information to that episode. I know it was kind of long. I feel really good about it, but obviously it was very, very granular in how deep we went into MK Ultra. But tonight's focus will be more so Manson, his activities, and the murders and stuff like that. You're scaring me, Clayton. Anyways.
Yeah.
We usually start the show off.
But
with current events. We just
So
alluded
that balloon, that
Yeah.
Chinese balloon,
Chinese balloon
what
that
the
got shot down.
fuck? Well, it took them way too long to shoot it down because it flew over military bases. It flew over a couple states, like multiple states. I'm shocked they didn't shoot it down instantly.
One of the reasons I saw that they waited so long to shoot it down was that it was over like civilian neighborhoods or something like that, and they didn't want any debris falling. So I get that piece of it. Maybe they wanted to wait for it to float over the ocean, which is when they finally ultimately did shoot it down. Right? So that to me is not too controversial, that piece right there. But if they were just waiting for it to kind of get out of some designated airspace or something, right?
Yeah, I think that's just a lame excuse to be like, yeah, it's just making sure everyone is safe. It's like, yeah, of course, that's obviously a thing, but I think they took too long to shoot it down.
Yeah.
I think you're back.
And there was some weird back and forth between Trump and Biden about like who handled it, apparently. And there was like Biden saying 100% the same stuff was going on while you were president, and then he had some like general back him up saying, yeah, or no, it was like the Defense Department or something. I'm way off base claiming this stuff.
Let me explain.
Plane's
Okay,
back.
so there
Set us
was an
straight.
article. Yeah, let's hope I might cut out in the middle of my explanation. So an article came out that said a balloon happened during Trump, but it was from an anonymous DoD source. And then you had Bolton, Pompeo, I think, Trump, and one more from their administration go, it did? I'm pretty sure it didn't. And then there was like another rebuttal article that said, we just found out. And it was like, no, dude, you could see the fucking balloon in the sky. Also, here's the scariest thing about that balloon. When they were testing EMP devices in the 50s, that's how they were releasing them. That is the range at which EMPs reach the most, or that's the height at which EMPs reach the greatest range, is like, I think it was 50,000 feet or something like that. And so, like, if you're going to spy, you're going to use a satellite. But if you're going to use an EMP, you're going to use it from there. It's kind of like nukes blow up above the Earth. EMPs also blow up above the Earth.
It was 60,000 feet or something crazy like that, wasn't it?
I forget the exact number.
Yeah.
So someone, there's a couple comments I want to catch up in chat, Clayton, since you said you can't see the chat. So we got
I can see
from.
it.
Oh, okay. So you can read it. All satellites use balloons. NASA lies about space. I 100% agree. I was talking shit about NASA last week because Jeremy was wearing a shirt, and I'll continue to talk shit about NASA. I agree. It took way too long, Sprinkles. And I agree with your second comment as well. Why would they allow it to fly over restricted airspace? That's what I'm saying. And I believe it flew over restricted airspace before it was over like civilian neighborhoods and shit. So
Well, they said they saw it coming over the Pacific, so they knew it was, and it made it all the way to Montana before a person saw it. And Montana is where like most of our ICBM storage is because it's Montana. So if it blows up, like who even died? Yellowstone? Who gives a shit?
I don't know.
And
it
that's a
doesn't make
perfect
sense.
excuse to like, hey, no one's in Montana. Blow it up, please. But I think they may have been worried if it had like a bioweapon or some type of like gravity bomb on it or something. That would have been a problem if you just shot it out of the air.
Are you saying
Yeah,
this thing
'cause then-
started in Montana and made it all the way to Carolina before they shot it down?
I believe so.
That
It
blows
went
my mind.
across. It went across the entire country. It didn't start in Montana. It started in the Pacific.
That blows my mind that it made
A
it.
person
It
on the
traversed.
ground saw it in Montana, and they had to respond.
I remember hearing that now. So it was originally like Montana and Idaho or something. You heard about it. That blows my mind. Like it made it all the way to the East Coast before they're like, oh, let's shoot. Let's let it complete its orbit and then shoot it down.
Yeah, dude. It didn't make any sense.
Yeah, I think that. Well, during that time, it was an argument as to whether you could shoot it down over a populated area. But again, it was Montana, so populated my ass. But also, they were worried, or they wanted to shoot it down over water, so they let it get to the East Coast and they shot it down off the coast of South Carolina, North Carolina, one of the Carolinas.
That's what I was saying. Like I understand the logic behind that. They wanted to wait until it was over water before shooting it down, so there's no debris like showering some neighborhood or some shit. Like I get that piece, but surely they could have found some farmland between fucking Washington State and North Carolina, right? I don't know. That piece seems kind of
no, and I think they like because someone in the government had a meeting with Xi Jinping like coming up next week that they had to cancel it.
Yes.
Because they were like, you can't do that, and then they were like, China said it's a civilian type of something, and it's like, China, no, you don't have civilian or independent balloons. You own everything in your country. You're a communist dictatorship.
That is the most bullshit excuse
Literally.
you could think of. If we try to do something like that, they would be losing their shit, dude. And it's our technology. Like they didn't.
Yeah, and I think
Go ahead.
people underestimate how large you can make a balloon like that too. Like the equipment on board is like a train car size. It's like a lot of equipment on a balloon. It's not just a balloon with a camera on it. So I don't know. It was a crazy story. That's part of the reason I want to watch the State of the Union, because if he doesn't mention his balloon blunder, then I get to call him an asshole.
For real.
Wasn't that kind of Trump's call out that he's going to hold China accountable and like not let them just whip us and like be their bitch, right? Like he was kind of holding them accountable, and it makes you think maybe every administration before Trump. I'm not claiming to be pro-Trump. I think there's good and bad there, but what I'm trying to say is maybe there was administrations, specifically the Democrats, that are very much in cahoots with the Chinese and kind of enabling and all that bullshit.
Definitely, dude.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can dig a rabbit hole down into Hunter Biden's dealings. He's getting no bid contracts with China for exorbitant amounts of money because his last name is Biden. So, I mean, there's there to be dug into. But I think on like a foreign policy type of situation, China wouldn't have done that with Trump because Trump seemed crazy, because he kind of was. And they were like, if Trump finds our balloon, he might just send a nuke. Because he
would have had some kind of
no one knew what he was going to do.
He might have had some proportionate response, which Biden seemingly allowed them to do whatever the fuck they wanted, and then as an afterthought, after it was out of our airspace, then it's safe to shoot down. You guys completed your scientific experiment. You've gained the knowledge you wanted. All right. Let me do my publicity stunt and shoot it down now. I don't know.
Nah, dude, Biden.
Yeah, well,
he can't even think. He sees the balloon and he's like, "Hey, mom, where's mom? Is mom here? Mom, look, a balloon. Mom, fucking idiot, dude. I love that video.
Birthday
Where's
balloon
mom?
go away."
Yeah.
I think Trump even could have had like a disproportionate response, and I think that's what allowed him to have leverage on a global stage, is that people thought he was crazy because he said crazy. Like, have you seen him shake hands with Putin that one time? And he grabbed Putin's hand and pulled him like 2 feet towards him, and then shook his hand like at his own tits. And you're like, that's a crazy man. And that's the vibe he put off. So they didn't mess with us at the time. Russia didn't invade Ukraine. China wasn't threatening Taiwan or sending balloons over the country. Say what you will about Trump. He is crazy, but that is a bonus that comes with crazy.
If you were a billionaire businessman that became president because you said you're fucking going to, would you not treat a dictator like that? Just like, come here, bitch. You're my bitch now. And I mean, like you said, like Jeremy said, I'm not like a Trumper or anything like that. Like, he did good things. He did bad things. I can acknowledge what he's done for right and wrong. Whatever he's doing behind closed doors, that's all him. But he had us with Russia and China. We were okay. We were doing okay. It's like he's keeping our enemy closer, like the fucking saying.
No, if I was a billionaire and I said I was going to become president and then did, I would go to the G2 summit where you meet all the world leaders, and I would just start wincing at people, and they'd be like, "What's wrong?" And I'd be like, "I got carpet burns on my dick because it's so big. Look at me.
Look at me.
Conquered the earth."
Yeah, dude. I'd be like Bruce Wayne.
I mean, literally, like the United States is the preeminent force on the earth as of now. I mean, we're in crazy debt and shit's not going great for anyone because of COVID and stuff. But I mean, if you want to be the leader of any country, you'd pick America, I assume.
Yeah, I would think so.
I don't think we should seed him. I'm fucking around. I'm sorry.
Well,
no, I'm
it's
thinking worst
7:15.
case. I'm thinking worst case scenario. You know, like the world is ending. Like I do kind of feel safe being in Texas. I feel self-sustaining, right? Like us I mean, we were a nation at one point. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, no. I think we're the only state that has a legitimate like threat as far as going, hey, we're fucking out, because we have all the energy, we have natural gas out the ass. We have
No,
a
it's
lot
not
of
even
the
that. Like
military
I think
in
we're the
our-
only state that's set up to
we
be
export
self-sustaining.
so much food.
Yeah. Like what
Yeah.
other state is set
No,
up?
that's what
Yeah.
I'm agreeing with you.
No. Well, like we have a legitimate threat to do it. I don't think it's the right thing to do. I'm not endorsing that by any means. Full disclosure, we shouldn't secede, but we have the means.
Yeah. No, but
That's true.
like during I mean, I guess the past 2-3 years, people have been talking about national divorce or whatever. If that happens,
Oh, you mean?
Texas could go, guess what? We're leaving the entire family. We're not picking a side. We're just out.
But then I feel like Mexico would just take us over because they had Texas before.
No.
No, are you
don't
fucking
think so?
kidding?
No,
No, we, as
Mex-
Texas, a single nation, beat Mexico. You have that backwards.
No, I'm saying
Our
no,
GDP is
Texas used to be
in the
Mexican
teens.
land.
I know.
So-
and then a
So
group
what
of
I'm
Texans got
saying
together
is
and
if
said,
we secede, hold on, if we seceded, that means they could fucking take us right back over. I'm not saying that it would happen. I'm saying it could happen.
I don't think they win that war, dude. I
No,
think Texas would kick their ass.
Cartel.
Yeah.
The cartel, maybe.
think the second-
yeah. But go ahead, Clayton.
I think the second Mexico takes like a aggressive stance towards Texas, it's over.
100%. And even if
Yeah,
we were on our
Because they're
own,
in
For sure. I'm not
They're in such
standing up for our own state because I'll admit we are in Texas, but I love Texas. But I just feel Mexico is pretty fucking big and they got a lot of guns and really crazy motherfuckers over there.
Yeah, but Drake, do you remember the Alamo?
I remember the Alamo.
that's the point I'm making. Even if we were on our own, even if we had succeeded, Jesus. Even if we were on our own,
Seceded.
like the United States as a whole would
Succeeded.
never allow us to lose that war. If there was some chance that we were in jeopardy of losing it, they would intervene 100%. We would have to concede and like get back into the Union or whatever. But there's never a chance that we would be on our own fighting that war. We're not
No,
giving
I think
up
we could
that
win on
territory.
our own
It happens
in
in
the
the
war.
Akashic
But I
Records.
think, we could win that war on our own, but we would be such a valuable ally to the rest of the states that they would help us anyways,
100%.
No, I get it.
whether we were part of them or not. And Mexico would never dare to do that, I don't think.
I don't think Mexico
I'm
has the
speculating
collective.
and
Go ahead.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm
we're
just speculating.
This is all
We're
100% speculation at this point.
21st century Mexican
I don't think
Texas
Mexico is
war.
any one entity. I think it's multiple cartels and other power struggles, but I don't think they could all come together and be like, hey, let's take over Texas without some kind of United States intervention
Drawback.
or anything like that. Yeah, 100%. Like they couldn't do
Well,
it.
yeah, because the cartel and a bunch of mafia people from Mexico have people in Texas living here. You know,
I'm also not trying to
doing-
diss Mexico. I love Mexico. It's an
Yeah.
amazing country.
I'm not dissing
amazing
Mexico at
people.
all.
100%.
Yeah.
I think there's some bad apples out there that are running the government.
Jeremy, look, they have the
Pablo
they
San
have-
Lucas is paradise.
Mexico has the cartel. We have politicians that are pedophiles. You know, you just pick.
Oh man,
Dude.
I'm not doing that right now.
All right, so on to Charles Manson.
On Charles Manson. So just before you jump into what your biggest piece is, I know I'm gonna put this out there.
I got clean.
No. It's. I'm giving you credit, Drake. So last
That is
episode,
such a weird pick your poison. That is such a weird pick your poison. The cartel or pedophiles?
yeah, that's why I didn't want to touch that one. But last episode, so it was mainly focused on MK Ultra building the case into Manson. So Drake, I feel like you didn't get a lot of screen time just because your piece is completely surrounded Manson. So just to give you your due credit, you're going to be starting us off tonight with deep diving into what Manson was, all of it, right?
Yeah, let's do it, man.
Well, let's fucking.
You got 10 minutes to
go. 10 minutes. Let's
You
fucking
have
go.
an
What am I
hour.
gonna do it the other night?
Take as much time as you possibly can.
All right.
No,
So
that's what I'm saying. You got the floor.
Yeah.
I'll try, man. I'm about to have some fun. Let's do this, guys. So Charles Manson.
Oh, hang on.
Oh my God.
Can I make one joke before you do it? I'm sorry. I know
Absolutely.
I'm cutting you off. Can I make?
No. Go ahead.
Okay.
Make the joke. Make the joke.
It hit me in the feels because I got on the plane to come down here to the border or whatever, and you have to give them your license or whatever. And the guy, they don't say shit to you; they just scan your shit and go, "You're good." But the guy specifically said, "Oh, you trimmed your beard," and I went, "Yeah, it made me look a little bit less like Manson." And he went, "Oh yeah, you're right, dude. You're right." And he handed me back my ID.
Holy
Here's
shit.
my ID. I do look like Manson in my ID. So, okay, that's my 2 cents. Go ahead.
I wish I had mine handy because I definitely kind of look like him in my old license as well. I was like stone cold fucking pissed off that day, I guess, at the DMV. Just like, take my fucking picture so I can go
You give him one of
LSD
these.
and control people's minds. Yeah. So Charles
Heard of
Manson.
the Beach Boys.
Ooh, I went back and found the information on that, so I will discuss the exact fucking song that was
Dude, that
stolen
came up
from
too.
him.
Like, I was blown away. Like, the name drop of Beach Boys. I was like, what the fuck, man? What is happening?
So one thing I bet not a lot of people know. I found this. I heard this first on the last podcast on the left's episodes on Charles Manson, but I also cross-referenced it with a random ass link I found on the internet. So Charles Manson, he was born in Ohio, but he was first named No Name Maddox. Take that in for
What
a
a
second.
dope ass band name, dog.
That is a dope ass band name. But he got Charles. I spelled it wrong. I think it's Mills. I wrote Miles, but I'm pretty sure it was Mills. Charles Mills Maddox. He got that name later. His mom. It's so fucking funny about his mom because like she's the really brought up strict Christian household, and she's like the crazy one that gets out and gets pregnant at 15 and becomes an alcoholic and a terrible mother.
It's amazing what that will do to you.
She was a prostitute.
Yeah, it's amazing what
She was a
Christianity does. No, I'm just kidding. Christianity doesn't always do that to you, but
It
she
is
was
what you make of
She
it.
was a prostitute, correct?
she was, yes. So it's so funny because Manson, when he talks about her, and in his autobiography that he wrote, he's like, yeah, my mom, she was a flower child of the 30s, but yeah, she had a lot of guy friends, and she might have sold her body, but she had a lot of guy friends, and we would just do our own thing, and she was just a little flower child. Like, he could not he loved his mom so much, and he could not come to the terms that she sold her body for sex.
Dude.
He just would like avoid it.
Fucking more than that. I'm sure you're going to get into that story. Go ahead. Clay.
Yeah, because eventually he gets into trouble for being a pimp. So I think
Yes.
maybe part of his not being able to cope with his mom being a prostitute is him having a very skewed view of the world, which continued into his later life. But have at it.
No, you good. So his mother, her name was Kathleen Maddox. The father technically is unknown, but she filed a parental suit against a man named Colonel Scott. And I don't really know if Colonel was his actual like name from birth, but everyone called him Colonel. And he also was in the army, so it's really kind of fucking hard to figure that out. So if someone can figure that out, let me know. This is his like legally on paper his father, but it might not technically be
His sperm donor?
They didn't have. They didn't have
No.
Maury back in the.
They didn't have Maury
30s
back
and
in the
40s.
day, or Jerry Springer. So, you had to. Well, Jerry Springer didn't really do that. But yeah, you didn't have Maury. So she filed a parental suit against him, and he signed it and agreed to it and all that. So he technically, on paper, is the father. So when she is telling him, like, yeah, I'm pregnant and you're the father, blah, 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 blah. Well, he's like, I have a bunch of business I need to go handle in the army. Dips, doesn't fucking come back. So Charles never likely met his father if that was him. Because this is the 30s, so people were getting pregnant kind of early, but 15 is still, you're a little fast. No, I'm just kidding. So he obtained the name Manson later. So after Colonel left, she got with a guy named William Eugene Manson. That's where he got Manson. So he was able to change his name to Charles Manson. So this dude was a total alcoholic. His mom started to become an alcoholic.
Shaquille O'Neal did the same thing, except his adoptive father was like a very positive influence. So
Shaquille O'Neal,
The basketball player?
Father. Yeah. I watched his documentary recently. He calls his stepdad his dad, and then grew a relationship with his biological father later. So it kind of lends to the nature versus nurture idea. Like, as long as you have a strong male role model, it might not matter if they're kin necessarily.
I'm definitely going through that experiment right now, but I definitely had more of a relationship with my step grandfather than I did my actual maternal grandfather, for sure. 100%. Nature versus nurture is a crazy mix. Drake,
you're not lying, man. I'm
sorry.
So
I'm a derailer.
I know, dude. I hate you. No, I'm just kidding. So this dude was an alcoholic. So was his mom. Started to really drink a lot at this point too, and she's like fucking 16 or 17 or something. So they would go on just drinking sprees and just be gone for days on end, and they would get random ass babysitters to watch Charles. Charles would stay with random dudes. So this is kind of where these random people would teach Charles like little petty stuff. Just he would just get in trouble with just little stuff. His mom was showing him like how to pickpocket people. So this dude was brought up a fucking criminal. And I mean, from birth, like the dude didn't have a name growing up. He's the Joker,
Literally the Joker. What's his name? Alfred Flink or something like that?
Oh, wow.
He's literally the fucking Joker, dude. He's real life Joker. It's awesome. I love comparing serial killers to like Batman villains. Sorry, that's like a weird thing I do.
It's not weird.
Solomon Grundy.
Who the fuck is Solomon Grundy?
No, I said Ted Bundy is Solomon Grundy.
Ted Bundy is. He might be.
Died on a Sunday.
Died on a Sunday.
Anyways,
all right, we're. This is too much.
Go ahead, Drake.
Oh man, hold on, I lost my spot. So they would, like I said, he started getting into trouble. So I did kind of go into this story. I'll say it again for any new viewers. When Charles was a little baby, his mom had him in a little crib. She went to the bar. She was drinking. This is the 1930s, so times were different.
Jeez, I didn't realize it was that early on.
He was born in, I don't know if I said that. So he was born in 1934, in November 12th, 1934. So this is probably 1935, 1936, right before the Great Depression. And his mom goes to a bar. She's drinking. The bartender walks up to her. She's like, oh my gosh. I've heard two conflicting stories on this, so I don't know which is true. She either like said, you have a really nice baby, I wish I could have a baby, or she's like, I'll buy the baby off of you. It's the 30s, so you can honestly believe either. And so after like talking, she's like, I'll give you the baby for, a pint of booze. So she's like, ha ha ha, gets her the booze. Freaking Kathleen chugs that shit down, tries to forget about having Charles, walks away, leaves. And then at that point,
Oh, dude, I heard this story. She like made a bet or something with the bartender and was like, "You can have my baby if I lose or whatever," and then lost and left the baby at the bar. And the bartender was like, "What the fuck do I do with this baby?"
So she kept him.
I think that's the
And-
conflicting story you're talking about, because I read the same thing Drake said, that she traded Manson for booze, Charles for booze, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So I've heard she traded, and I heard basically she traded. She traded Charles for a fucking a pint of booze, and
Hell right.
so she leaves. Yeah, right. She leaves, and then her brother, Charles' uncle, decides like, I'm gonna go fucking hunt this baby down, because she comes home and she didn't have the son. So he tracks Charles down, gets Charles, brings him back. His mom just keeps getting into. So she leaves Manson, William Eugene Manson, who Charles took the name from. So they get. I don't know if they got married, but they either broke up or divorced like 3 or 4 years later. So his mom gets into it with other men. She's dating all kinds of dudes, just prostitute. She starts making armed robberies. She gets arrested, and she's teaching Charles to be a troublemaker this whole time. So she did get caught. I don't think she had to suffer any consequences from giving Charles to the bartender. I think the uncle just hunted him down, and she never like suffered anything from that, except being just a shitty mother. So when so Charles' mom goes to prison for armed robbery I think she got a 10-year sentence. She got a 10-year sentence. She only served like 3 or 4 years. And then while she went to prison, Charles goes to live with his uncle who saved him and his aunt. But his uncle is not all, he's not a good guy. I'll just put it that way. He's sadistic. He treats Charles like a piece of shit. He teaches Charles even more ways of being a petty criminal. So one example, Charles apparently was like a real bad crybaby when he was young. He would cry a lot. He would complain. I would too if my mother sold me for fucking booze. So his uncle decides, okay, for your first day of school, I'm going to dress you up like a girl and you can be a little crybaby. So Charles has to go to school dressed as a little girl.
Shit.
That's pretty goddamn PC of his uncle, you know what I'm saying? He's like, hey man, you have a choice.
No, I mean, if you're telling me that Charles Manson's uncle did something bad to him, I can't believe it. I can't imagine he had a very good childhood at all,
Oh god, dude, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. So we're
this dude got kicked out of reform school.
So so he escaped multiple times. He went to so many different ones over all across the nation. So his mom gets out of prison. Charles goes back to live with her. She can't handle him. She goes to a judge and she's like, "Hey, I cannot take care of this kid." So the judge is like,
on Drake.
Yep.
Every episode this happens.
Give me a fucking break.
I got a pretty face. I know it looked like Manson, but let's give Drake his due.
So the judge sends Charles to a reform school in Indiana. This is run by Catholic priests. They see how much of a hellraiser Charles is, and they tried to beat it out of him. So he would lie. You want to feel bad for him. It's like Jeffrey Dahmer. You want to feel bad for him because he never had a chance. He legitimately never had a fucking chance. And he's putting all these schools. So it's real scary when you start to realize what these reform schools would do that were led by Catholic priests. The Catholic priests would get some of the kids, their favorites, like the kiss asses of the fucking school, and they would get them to snitch. So Charles would always be in trouble. So these kids would go tell the Catholic priests, like, Charles is doing this, Charles is doing that. They would beat Charles. They would discipline him. They would even turn blind eyes to the other students, and these other students that were the snitches would go sexually assault Charles and many other boys.
They would encourage other students to do the sexual assaulting?
Yes, I did find that.
Dude, that's pretty crazy. That's an aspect I never really heard. I mean, what priests doing sexual activities is one thing, but encouraging the kids to.
Well,
that was their reward. They were like, hey, if you tell us what these bad kids are doing, we'll turn a blind eye
We'll
if
give
you
you a
want to
handy.
beat them or if you're trying to, get your shit done.
well, this so I mean, obviously, this is kind of like the social dynamics of the cult, kind of already in his formative years. But as an aside, this reminds me of Norm Macdonald used to have a podcast. His host was the manager of or his co-host was the manager of the Tempe Improv, and then is now the manager of the Comedy Store in LA. He has a crazy story about going to like a reform summer camp that was cultish, that he was like stuck in for a couple of years, where like kids died and it was swept under the rug. So I mean, that was in the 80s. So if you imagine the scenario that you're laying 50s, out, yeah.
Isn't there some
scenario you're laying out for Manson?
Isn't there some legislation going through the House or Senate right now about trying to criminalize like summer camps or some shit?
Well, that would be stupid, but I don't know.
I mean, obviously not broad spectrum, but I think like they were targeting a specific groups. It might have been like church camps or something, but they were saying like it was like akin to ISIS, like recruiting or something. I'm gonna stop. That's my side.
Hey, listen, I went to church camp from 6th grade till I graduated, even past graduation, if I'm being real honest. Yeah, okay. I don't disagree to some extent. It's very emotionally manipulative, and what Drake is laying out in Manson's seemingly entire life is every experience he's had is manipulative in some way, especially emotionally.
Absolutely.
Especially if he's being essayed on like a pretty consistent basis. That'll
exactly
ruin anyone's brain. So
like he never had any nurture. Like Jeremy was saying, nurture versus nature. He never had nurture. Like his mom didn't want him. He didn't have a dad. He didn't have his grandparents, I guess. I don't know what they ever thought of him, but they were real strict Christians. So obviously you see this little boy that's always a troublemaker. I don't know how they felt about him. Your uncle's sadistic. That he lived with him. As soon as Kathleen had gotten out of prison, like I mentioned earlier, and Charles went back and started living with her, the uncle and aunt were probably like, damn, we don't have to deal with this little fucker anymore. Which is sad to say. I mean, I'm not standing up for Charles Manson. As a child, I'm standing up for Charles Manson because it's like this child has no chance.
Shout out Twipper in the chat. He's got a great comment.
Shout out Twipper. Okay.
Go ahead and read it. Yeah, you got it.
Okay. Shout out Twipper. Let me get this. I'm reading the chat off my iPad right now. I wouldn't think it would be overly talked about, but rather wink, wink. We know what's going on and we're not going to do anything about it. Those priests need plausible deniability, no? Or the nuns. Yep. So that's absolutely right.
That's how that functions, essentially, is as they can put the people who they're allowing to do the bad things in front of their higher ups and be like, these are the kids we're raising. Don't look behind door number 2 type situation, And I mean, if you imagine the control the runners of these schools had over these dichotomies between the kids, if they're manipulating them against each other in this way, then you can imagine the psychological effect it would have on a person like Manson, who's not necessarily a goody as far as the reform school goes, and even past that. I mean, his whole life being looked over, and I think that's probably why he so embraced the hippie culture, is because he was of no family. And so the rest of this culture is talking about one love, we're a giant family. And he was like, guess what? I'm making my own family, something I've never had. So I'm bridging a gap you haven't bridged yet, but I like
making
that.
Good connections.
Yeah, that connection there and his dissonance with the family structure and his creation of his own family structure in the most fucked up way ever.
Yeah.
I think needs to not be overlooked. Yeah.
And that makes a lot of sense because like he was in charge of the family. He was head honcho. He made these people think that he was Jesus Christ himself. You know, he was a Messiah. He was a prophet, whatever term you want to use. He knew that because he was so small. He was always so timid. He was diagnosed very young as like severe antisocial. And dude, it just makes sense. I would be antisocial as fuck too if you threw me into different schools and I'm trying to just escape and always going back to your mom. He would always try to go back and live with his mom and she'd send him back. Or, you know, she would always just send him back. And
yeah. Well,
dude,
and
it's just no love at all.
as another aside and to push us further into his future, and we'll bring it back to wherever you want to pick us back up on, but the way he okay, so someone coming from a no family background or the background he had in which family structures didn't exist, he didn't understand them, obviously. The tools he was seemingly given through the MK Ultra program seemed to be the way that he was controlling the family that he built around him, as far as sleep deprivation, dosing with LSD. I mean, he ran the Manson family. He did run the Manson family. He brainwashed these people. And so if you look at him through the lens that we're looking at him now, in which he never had a family structure, he was through reform schools, through prison, through his just awful upbringing, it is obvious that he wouldn't have the tools to run a cult because he doesn't necessarily know how people function. He only knows the worst of people. And so it seems obvious to me that he would need a outline of how to instruct and control people. And that's the tie back into MK Ultra, but jump back in where you were because this is all.
Oh yeah. So yeah, he's in and out of reform schools. He's in prison. I think he said in his last interview. I think it's his last interview. Nah. Either way, there's an interview that you can type in. It's Charles Manson, like Australia, and it'll show you. And he says, where did it go? Fucking A, I lost my spot. I'm sorry, guys.
Is it 60 Minutes?
No, it's not with Diane Sawyer. It was the other one. It was with Australian people.
Twipper, we obviously have an issue with our Nightbot. Don't take that silence.
Yeah, I'm trying to fix
anything.
that. I'm trying to fix that right now.
Oh, you're good. Okay, I'll just jump back into it.
Say whatever you want, whenever you want. We welcome it. Sorry.
I don't know how I override Nightbot. I'm gonna fucking kill Nightbot, dude.
And then Sprinkle says, wouldn't any church be essentially brainwashing people and churches, cults?
Some very much can be. Some you can go both ways with that.
That was my explanation as to church camps. Some of them were very brainwashy, and I think churches.
Go watch
Jesus Camp. Are you gonna say Jesus Camp?
Yeah.
I love that documentary.
Camp. Go watch Jesus Camp on. Is it on Amazon or Hulu?
It might be on HBO. I don't know. It's on one of them.
Go watch Jesus Camp. Just type that in on IMDb or Google, and you'll find out where you can watch it. If you got to pay to watch it, you pay to watch it because it's fucking great, and it will show you how Christianity does brainwash.
Yeah, and so every church camp I went, no one ever talked in tongues, but the sentiment was the same. So
Excuse me?
To me, is very enlightening.
Hold on. We're not going to jump into Christianity right now. Although Charles his mom. Charles did try to get real religious for a while. He did try to seek religion. I think he got that from his mom because of his family. I'm just trying to get through this so we can get to the.
Well, and during the cult
shit.
During the cult times, he used Revelation to manipulate his followers, as well as Beatles music and LSD, obviously.
Absolutely.
But he did use biblical prophecy, so he had at least a tertiary knowledge of Christianity or the Bible.
So he was in prison a lot. Oh, he was in prison for 34 years. That's what he said in that fucking Australia interview that I was talking about. So for 34 years of his life, and I think he was like 42 at that time, and he lived to be 83. He died in prison, which is just insane that someone like him will stay alive in prison for the rest of his life.
Well, he almost got married in prison, but his fiance started. No. His fiance started fucking the guy outside that lived out. His name was like Night Wolf or something. Like literally, his name was Wolf. I got that something. Too. She started fucking that guy while she was supposed to be getting engaged to Manson in prison, but she was only staying with that guy so she could be close to the prison. But that guy also looked like Manson, but a foot taller. And
that's what I was gonna say. He was like a clone of Manson, but just a foot taller, probably better hair. Better teeth or some shit.
Well, and what's interesting about that is during his cult days, he was like basically having nightly orgies with brainwashed women. So it's kind of weird for him to feel possessive over a woman.
Charles was definitely, you could say, bisexual. Oh man, do y'all want to get real dark real quick?
Let's do it. That's what we're here for.
He raped multiple boys at knife point. And he was.
Hang on. Don't bulldoze through that. What did you just say?
I'm not bulldozing through it.
He raised multiple boys.
No. Boys. We have to find a different word.
Okay, he sexually assaulted. He sodomized by knife point multiple people, boys.
These are not better words. Let's essayed. He essayed.
Fucking say. All right.
I agree. On Twitch.
I get it. But yeah, he sexually assaulted him. At the end of the day, he sexually assaulted him. So, all right.
No, yeah.
It's a lot, man. You got it, Drake. It's a lot. It just sucks having to read about this shit.
Yeah, doggy. We went through the shit I had to just course over last week.
He's getting let out of these prisons with these charges with armed robbery, grand theft auto, car theft, rape. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. But a sexual assault, all this stuff. And then and the prison is like, let him out, slap on the wrist, let him out. So 1967, he gets released. He moves to LA.
That was a 7-year. Hang on. Let me intrude one more time. And by one more time, I mean, that's what I do. That was a 7-year stint, correct?
Yeah, I think it was about 7 years. Yeah.
6 or 7 years from.
Yes, you're so absolutely right, because he was in prison the entire 60s until 1967. He didn't experience the hippie movement until the fucking end of it, and the CIA had him ruin it.
Yeah, so let me introduce my funny nut theory of the evening. That
hell yeah.
So I think the same. We talked about Whitey Bulger a little bit last week. Whitey Bulger, over a course of 15 months, had almost daily LSD injections in prison. And Sidney Gottlieb, who I was talking about last week, that's what he was using. He was using like psychiatrists in prisons and hospitals and mental wards and stuff like that. I don't think there's a record because most of the record was erased by Sidney Gottlieb. But I believe that. So the theory that's proven in the book that you read, which is Chaos by Tom O'Neill, is that at least at Haight-Ashbury, he was under a psychiatrist who was dosing people LSD. But I believe that in prison, because he's in prison during the time they're dosing people in prison, I believe in prison they started dosing him and started warping his mind with MK Ultra ideas.
Yes,
and that's what I wanted to get out of that. His last prison stint was 7 years, or 6 or 7 years, or something like that. So
it was.
Continue with that, because
because I'm about to add on perfectly to that. You segued me perfectly. Because he gets out of prison. From what Clayton and I are saying, it's a possibility that he was already being tested at this point, and it makes perfect sense. He moves to LA. His parole officer, a fucking Roger Smith, who
the name rings a bell.
I talked about him last week. So for all you new people, he was Manson's parole officer, but he also worked at Paint Ashbury Free Medical Center.
Dude, I caught that too.
Supplying.
Give me 1 second to address
1
chat.
second. All right.
I know. Chat plan was at 8 we go to the State of the Union. I need 1s for the State of the Union. I need 2s for Let's Continue with Manson, because if not, next week we're gonna go Manson into the next MK Ultra possible victim. So 1s for State of the Union, 2s for Manson, and then let's keep going with Manson until State of the Union starts.
I kind of like where you're going, because honestly, there's still so much of this story. So if
That's
I
what I'm
get
saying.
to the murders, we can continue the murders next week into whoever you're talking about doing next. That was
Right.
tested by the CIA. Because I mean, I was honestly going to stop it. I wasn't even really going to go over the murders too much, because I knew Jeremy said he was going to kind of get on him. This was before all these plans started. So
I didn't get to
it's
the
a
murders.
beautiful, tragic story that I think we need to treat correctly. So we're either going to continue Manson next week, or we're going to finish Manson tonight. And we need chat's response as to what they want.
I'll talk while they do that.
We can make fun of Biden, or we can keep going through Manson. That's all I'm saying.
I think we should keep going with this. I feel like we're on a good roll here. If anybody is watching the State of the Union, wants us to commentate on it, I've got it on in the background. I'm sure you guys do too. But I don't know. I imagine that stuff is pretty boring. We'll leave it at that.
Sprinks and Twipper gives us a 2, and
We'll
so far
keep
we have
going.
2 votes.
We're good.
Let's 2 out of 10.
If anything comes up, we'll definitely address it. But I think for the most part, we're good for now. Let's keep going.
Either way, at 8, I'm taking a piss. So
yeah, we usually take a break at the top of the hour. So we'll definitely do that, and then we'll come back and address the address.
But let's keep going with Manson. So
all right, so let's please the chats. He gets out. He violates probation all the fucking time, and instead of Roger Smith, his parole officer, putting him back in prison for what he should be going to prison for, because he doesn't really have a job, so he's burglarizing and stealing cars all the time just to get by.
Before he even gets to Roger Smith, he has a different parole officer in.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because Roger Smith is out of. It's either LA. Okay, so he was based out of San Francisco.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's right. And he goes to somewhere fucking else, and they're like, "You're not supposed to be here. Like, technically, we're supposed to take you to prison." And then he gets transferred to where he moved to.
Yeah.
For seemingly no reason, which is under Roger Smith, who is the guy who starts not giving a shit that Charles Manson is on parole.
I wouldn't say not giving a shit. I would say it's by design, but that's the conspiracy, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean. But just to provide some context as to Roger Smith, is that he was never supposed to be under Roger Smith. He was supposed to be in another county.
No, that's
California.
The chaos theory that O'Neill's covering. It seems absurd that he gets to cross these. That's another part of what I read is he's doing these petty crimes. Grand Theft Auto is not a petty crime, but as soon as he crosses state borders, it becomes a federal crime, and it enters the realm of the CIA and all this stuff. And then he starts getting his hand patted instead of getting the repercussions of these crimes. And so to me, that's the conspiracy.
I told Drake I was going to cut him off with this earlier this evening before we started the stream, but the parallels, we went over in MLK 3 weeks ago. It was technically 2 episodes ago. And James Earl Ray's record, as far as getting in trouble and getting out of jail, is very similar to Charles Manson's record as far as getting in trouble and getting out of jail.
It's the same playbook.
That if you look at that record, it looks like, why is he even on the fucking street? And so there's 2 ways to look at it. One of the ways is that our system is a failure, which I don't even disagree with. But the second way to look at it is that purposefully, because these 2 people specifically, and more that we'll go over later, are anomalies even within the bad system as far as getting in trouble and getting out of jail. I'm going to steal this from Drake. I'm sure he's going to bring it up later. But Tom O'Neill, the author of the book that Drake read called Chaos, Manson and MK Ultra or something. It's an excellent book. He says in interviews that he brought Manson's record to a DA, maybe not a DA, a prosecutor who had was involved in one of the cases, and Tom O'Neill is showing him a list of cases, and he brings the list of cases to the guy who passed on him once, and he's like, "Oh no, this is crazy. Like, I was involved in this one, but this whole entire list, someone didn't want this guy in jail." And we have a similar person in a similar state of power as far as prosecutorially, with James O'Reilly saying that, like, obviously with his record, someone didn't want him in jail. And so this is like the second instance of alphabet agency keeping people that they're obviously using out of jail.
It's the playbook for sure.
Absolutely. All right, so let me see. Okay, so I think I found a little bit. It doesn't say the exact name of the parole officer, but he moved to Berkeley from Los Angeles, which could have been a probation violation. Instead, after calling the San Francisco probation office upon his arrival, he was transferred to the supervision of criminology doctoral researcher and federal probation officer Roger Smith, who I mentioned.
That's what I just said, that he was supposed to be in San Francisco and he got transferred to LA for no reason. Okay.
Yeah. So that's what I was saying. I found that. And until the spring of 1968. So not to jump forward too much, but 1967 to 1969. 1969 is when the Tate and LaBianca murders all happened, where the 9 people died. I guess I can't remember, because Sharon Tate was pregnant, so it could technically be 10, or is it 9 including the baby?
It's 9 including the baby, because the Sharon murders were 4 people and a baby, and the LaBianca's was 4 people.
And he's only convicted of 7. He's only convicted of 7.
Well, and the fucked up thing about it is that every person that was killed that he's charged with, he never killed.
Nope. And it was all conspiracy to murder, because they couldn't prove that he did it. Because Charles Manson isn't technically a serial killer, but he's in that category. Yay.
There's a little intrusion there. I'm sure you're going to get into later. And I am jumping the timeline, but I'm going to do it anyways.
He stabbed a guy and he shot a guy, but they didn't die.
Right. But I'm going to introduce people, and then you're going to tell the story. This is what's going to happen. Tex Watson is a cult member. Murders happen. Tex Watson moves back to Texas. Yep. There's like 7 hours of audio tape on Tex Watson where he explains literally everything. And there's murders in those tapes that were never prosecuted or like fully fleshed out investigationally. And in those murders, there is so the tape's never been heard except for like 3 people ever in the world.
O'Neill was one of them, right?
The room. No, he never got those tapes.
Oh.
But the implication in those tapes is that Charlie Manson did kill people. But
really,
everything that he was tried for was people he never killed at all. So
I was reading there was stuff like he was showing up before the police and like staging scenes, and like that was part of the conspiracy, is that he was the one writing Helter Skelter and doing all that shit and staging the scenes.
No.
You're jumping
ahead. Told him to. Yeah, but Drake's going to get to it for sure.
He did, but his followers fucked up because they had too many drugs in their system. And so they didn't do exactly what he wanted them to do. They killed the people, but they didn't leave the mark saying this was the Black Panthers or this was, African Americans starting the race war. And so he had to go back to the fucking murder scenes, and he wrote Helter Skelter all over the place. And I'm pretty sure they did write. It was Tex and Sadie that wrote Pig and Pig's all that shit and Sharon Tate's blood. But what are you gonna say?
This is where we need to introduce the term permafried.
Yes.
In that the cult members, I'll get into this later, but their minds were essentially flayed.
On.
No, that's
from the LSD and stuff like that.
I think that's a good segue into hour 2, Mark, right?
It is.
Yep. I
can
don't
pick back
have
up
a
in
video
a couple
to
minutes.
play, so we're gonna.
You can play a
to
Charles Manson interview just until we get back.
Do you want to see
Is
a
that what
crazy
you want to
dude?
do? I don't know, man. I don't know.
What
if
are
I
you
wanna
gonna
that.
do? I gotta piss right now. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
me
I gotta
too.
pee too. So just start the waiting stream.
Seems to have encrypted.
Do that.
We are back. I wouldn't say that. If you voted for Biden, I'm not nothing like that.
I'm
You
not
definitely.
gonna. I'm just playing. We're making jokes. This is called Funny Nut Theorios. We're just making jokes. If you voted for Biden, that's your business, and I
Prerogative.
don't give a fuck because it doesn't affect me.
I mean, it does affect you.
Whatever. He's not my president. Yeah. So, where were we? Are you gonna stop this clapping?
I thought I muted on my end. My bad.
I was like, dude, it's been clapping for like.
Clayton, you might
45
be
seconds.
muted.
Clayton,
My
you're
bad.
muted.
I muted myself. I'm sorry. But for real, I've been trying to get rid of the clapping since we started.
That wasn't my clapping. That was the State of the Union through the Watch Me.
Hey, y'all. One's in chat, so if you never want to hear a clap on this channel again.
2 in chat if
Hold
you
on.
think it adds to another level of production quality that you appreciate. And that's it. Drake, go. Oh shit, there's
Drake
Drake's ass. Thank you, Lauren. Witty waifu in the house.
Hey.
2 all day.
All right. I guess.
You run your show your way. I'll run our show my way.
Fair enough.
Anyway.
Is my shit still coming through too loud?
No, we're good, man.
No, you're good.
Okay.
Everything's gravy. Let's keep it going on the Manson train.
All right. What up,
Said
Woody?
no one ever.
waifu? That's my girl. All right, let's keep going. So,
He's selling Forrest Gump, dog.
Forrest Gump. Give me some better credit
Yeah.
than that.
No, when Jenny's like, "I'm your girl first," and he's like, "You're my girl." That's my girl.
Get the fuck out of here. All right. I don't even know where we left off. Oh, dude, guess what I found out?
What'd you find out?
Hate, how do you say it? Hate Ashbury.
You
Yeah.
hate Ashbury. Okay.
Hate Ashbury. They were testing more than LSD.
Well, yeah.
Can you guess what other? No, I mean like on Manson and his followers and a bunch of other people. Like, do you know exactly the other drug he was testing people with?
Was it speed?
Yes. Oh no, I don't. Heroin,
Methamphetamine.
meth. Okay.
So not only,
That's
that's
speed.
what's crazy, man, is that Charles and his fucking followers are doing meth, or like it's not crystal meth at that time, but it's amphetamines and LSD at that time, and so they're just
Here's a
going
question.
wild.
Here's a question no one can answer because meth later became huge in like biker gang culture, as far as like motorcycle rider bikers. Did that start then? You know what I'm saying?
Like the crank.
Yeah, because like meth at one point took over the.
90s. No, right? The 90s was crank, right?
Yeah, late 80s, 90s probably. It coincided with like the crack pandemic.
I don't know. All right. So okay. So we're this is where we're diving into the CIA shit.
Sweet crank.
So yeah. So what happened? That sweet
What?
crank, Miss Dirty Cousin. That's Bob's Burgers. She's quoting Bob's Burgers.
It's like Jason Statham. I'm cranked.
Oh crap.
Crank is a fantastic
Open.
movie, and nobody can convince me otherwise.
I've been doing crystal meth.
Anyways.
Well, what's funny is Roger Smith would see most of Manson's followers, which were mostly females. So you know how Manson. Okay, so One thing I forgot to mention earlier, before Manson got out of prison, when he was in the prison in the 60s, he learned from local inmates how to pimp out women and how to like talk to a woman as a pimp. And she's, yours at that point, and calling her bitch and all that different shit.
I watched an interview. I know, dude. It's just what I do, okay? I watched an interview with him on like 60 Minutes, some fucking Barbara Walters. I don't even know. But it was Diane Sawyer, actually. And
it's a great Rush song.
I guess you also watched it. Diane Sawyer, sweet, sweet. No. But he was talking about, I mean, if you watch Manson talk, he's obviously fucking nuts. Yeah. But he was talking about his upbringing, and he was like, I learned everything I could from everyone in prison, from everyone in reform school, but he was learning all the wrong things. And one of the things he brought up learning in prison was how to pimp women. So I've seen it from his own fucking mouth, what you're saying, that he learned how to pimp women in prison.
It's crazy, man.
And I think he used that same skill of learning those skills while he was at Haight-Ashbury. And so people were dosing him with LSD. And he went, dude, if I get a shitload of LSD, I can make anyone do whatever I want them to do, which is what he ended up doing.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. He learned how to. That's what I'm thinking, man. Because, like, he learned everything from these inmates and from these CIA agents testing him and telling him, like, do this to these people and make them do this and see how they react to this. Make them lose conscious. Make them get in these, like, the one podcast I listened to got real detailed with, like, he would make them sexually just, like, they wouldn't be humiliated. If he was like, you get down and you give her head and shit, go down on her type of thing. And she would do it. And she wouldn't even think about it, and she's not even a lesbian. And
let's parallel that with Midnight Climax is happening at the same time in San Francisco, or maybe a couple years earlier. But like literally the CIA's operation of using LSD and sex to manipulate people and figure out what they can do to get whatever they want out of them is almost exactly what Manson does to his family. And then he gets them to commit murder. Like the entire goal of MK Ultra was to scramble brains and make them Manchurian candidates.
He made them weapons.
Mind controlled. Yeah, and that's what MK Ultra wanted to do. They wanted to take these people, wipe their brains, make them do something, and not remember they did it. Yeah. And I think the cult members remember they did it, but they were so devoted to Manson that they didn't give a shit that they did it. Yeah. And so like that, I think if you're looking through the eyes of Sidney Gottlieb, who we talked about last week,
yes,
what Manson did is technically a success. And it's probably one of the few successes.
No, they were saying MK Ultra was like it was a successful project just based on what happened with Manson. And Drake, I don't mean to imagine you're getting into it, but from what I was reading, they were saying Manson was like illiterate and like he wasn't very smart, right? Like how could he get to the level of manipulation that he did if it wasn't for the CIA involvement and like the practices of MK Ultra that they taught him and told him to use, right?
I will give him a break in that argument, in that he was incredibly charismatic, and he does have mesmerizing eyes.
He's adorable.
I'm not gonna say he's adorable, but yeah.
He's a 5'6" little timid fucking antisocial little guy that just LSD more than 500 times, like.
Well, and it's a terrible thing to say about such a terrible person, but he was socially very advanced in his abilities, being that he's very charismatic. And then
he had connections too. He had many music connections. He was trying to score record deals.
Oh yeah, that was tying him into the Beatles, right? Like he thought like specific Beatles songs were calling him the next Messiah and shit like that.
Exactly.
But I think what ingratiated him in the hippie culture is his charisma, as well as two women, I assume, because I favor him a bit. He's pretty fucking attractive.
Just because you look like him, you have a certain bias toward him.
Yeah, he had blue eyes. I got hazel. It's the same thing. Look, watch this.
Oh,
I don't think you want to be associated with Manson, but I do have blue eyes, so.
No, I don't.
So,
But he did have a certain, way with.
he was
people.
charming, and he was charming to people, and he could make it to seem like where the shit he said just made sense. All these people were like his followers. When I say all these people, were like runaways, and he says it to many people that interviewed him. He's like, they're the kids you didn't want, and so I took them in, and he showed them everything. And
Twipper says he had 109 IQ, which is above average, and that he learned how to be a master sociopath. Have you ever taken an IQ test?
I don't think. I think at some point, me and my brothers were tested, and I think mayonnaise was the highest of us. Go figure.
I took one.
Not kidding you.
I took one. I don't know how legitimate it was, if I'm being frank, but it was like it made me feel smarter than I probably am because it was a very high score. But I did the same thing.
Aren't you lucky?
No, I did the same thing with the ASVAB test, the military test that they give to you in high school.
Oh yeah.
I scored the highest in my grade and didn't know it. And they were like, you can do whatever you want in the Army. And I went, I don't want to join the Army, though.
It's an interesting thing to think that maybe you could walk into the military and kind of not walk into a general role, but like eventually into a general and kind of make some real change. I don't know. It's a thought I had recently.
The recruiter literally said, do you want to be a nuclear tech on a sub? And I went, that sounds like a nightmare. No, I don't. What I literally said is, can I play guitar in the Army? And he said,
you've seen Bye Bye Birdie, right?
He said, no, but we have a jazz band. I went, I think you're at the wrong table, buddy.
I don't know, man.
But it is interesting how, like, because I think Ted Bundy also had a really high IQ. Is that the right guy?
Ted Bundy, he was intelligent. He was a politician. He was a Republican. He was a young Republican. He was very involved in politicians. He wanted to be an attorney. He was his own attorney in his trial, which I don't know about the whole trial. I need to see if they got him.
I guess
he definitely was. He was like one of the dudes that was like a perfect, like secret killer because he was involved in his community and all that, and he was super smart. A bunch of people knew him. He was very handsome and good looking. And no one ever thought that he was the monster he was.
Well, and let's assume the juxtaposition with Manson to Bundy, and that Manson's early life is tragic, to say
and Bundy's
lightly.
Was not.
And for Manson to have that type of upbringing and such a high IQ, and then to accomplish what he accomplished negatively or positively, he was an overachiever in the worst sense of it.
I don't know. I feel like that was contradictory to what I read. I feel like he wasn't amounting to much at all, and that's what attracted.
Well, it's because what he was striving for was an artistic career path.
Yeah.
He wanted to be an artist, and
he wanted to be a musician, right?
Yes.
There is one Charles Manson song that I think is even on Spotify, and it's like by Charles Manson.
What
it
the
might be on YouTube. Who knows? It's one of his
music out there. Yeah, he has music out there you can hear.
That blows my mind. That should be removed from the internet, I think.
No. Don't remove anything from the internet, you goddamn censor. But what I'm saying
get on him.
Is that for late 60s, early 70s, the song that I'm thinking of is on par with anything that came out at that time.
If you go watch Mindhunter and the episode that he's featured on, the post-credit scene plays one of his tracks.
Well,
that's blowing my mind. I didn't know that stuff was like public domain, or not public domain, but like out there for the public to witness.
They definitely put it in there.
Drake, put me in line here because Terry Menschel, something like this, was the producer for the Mamas and the Papas and the Beach Boys, amongst.
Yeah.
I think his mom was fucking Betty Davis or something crazy. But the Sharon Tate lived in this Terry guy's old house, and the prosecutor during the case was like, "Oh, he killed him because he wanted to intimidate Terry. He killed these people because he wanted to intimidate this producer who rejected him or whatever."
Yeah.
But he ended up having a much more inclusive relationship with this Terry guy. He saw him after the murders and shit like this. But he had like legitimate auditions with the producer of the Beach Boys, who said he wasn't talented enough. But I would venture to guess that he's this far not talented enough upon listening to the song.
I think it was mainly like how manic he was and how fucking crazy he was, and like what he was singing about wasn't that far off from what was going on. But you got to think about it. He was in prison for so long, and he was learning guitar and singing and writing his own songs in prison. And he would show like people all the time, like, "Hey, come listen to this song I play," and he would play for them. And so
and his position, kind of amongst the stars that he kept himself around somehow, the Beach Boys and this producer, was that he was providing. I mean, he never stopped pimping women. He just tricked them into taking LSD and listening to what he did. So he was still dealing drugs and women, and so that's how he got around this producer and the Beach Boys is that they always had what they wanted. And so he always
had 30 girls with him. He's like Bruce Wayne without the money.
I mean, at one point he lived with this producer, and this didn't come out in the court case, it came out in this book that Drake read. But it sounds like I read it. I didn't fucking read it. I just watched every interview that Tom O'Neill did. But
Chaos?
JRE.
And so no, he was also on Concrete, which is a pretty good podcast also. But
cool.
Which I think is a little bit better than JRE. He gives a little bit more because he thinks it's a small podcast. I'm okay. In the sense of Tom O'Neill being on a podcast, it's a better podcast.
It's a better podcast with him on it. I got you.
Was it Concrete? Which podcast are you talking about?
Yeah, it was Concrete.
Concrete's fantastic. Good stuff. Quality.
But what I'm saying is that Manson learned manipulation, and he used manipulation around these producers and these artists, but they weren't numb to it because they're in a industry of manipulation. So he was as useful as he could be for him to be around, but he scared them off of providing him from an actual music career. And I think if that he would have been like a more of a normal person, and that this producer would have heard the same music, because the Beach Boys did cover and change the lyrics and basically steal a Charles Manson song.
I can tell you exactly which one.
So I think if he wasn't fucking crazy, he would have had a legitimate music career. Because I listened to one song that was produced and recorded, and it's Charles Manson, and for the time that it is in, it is great.
I didn't know about. I knew he was like a musician, like had connections to that realm. I didn't know he actually had like producers recording this shit and publicizing it. That's blowing my mind.
He recorded.
He would literally get around these people. He would be in LA, so one, there's already all these LA connections, and he'd walk around. He'd have drugs. He'd have women. He was a pimp. He was prostituting these women. So he's like, yeah, we can come hang out and we can party and we can do amphetamines and LSD, and this girl suck your dick while I'm over here writing this song, playing this and with this producer. And freaking so he writes a song called Cease to Exist. I don't Dennis Wilson is his former friend and associate, basically. I think it's the drummer of the Beach. Yeah, it's the drummer of the Beach Boys. So he was friends with Dennis.
Brian Wilson runs the Beach Boys, plays the fucking bass or something.
But he never met Brian, from what I read. He never met Brian. Did he?
From what I read, he absolutely did.
Okay, I think Brian was fucking crazy, and Dennis was the only one really fucking with him.
No, I think Brian did think he was crazy, but I think Brian thought he was crazy because he met him.
What if Roger Smith or these CIA agents were like, hey, Brian, fucking don't. He's ours.
You might be right, but also, so it's Terry Melcher is the name I was thinking of earlier. That's his name. It's the producer.
Yeah, that's ringing a bell.
Terry Melcher's a producer, and what's the drummer's name? Something Dennis Wilson.
They were their
Are
brothers.
content. He's the brother of the main Beach Boy. So the drummer and brother of the main Beach Boy and the producer of the Beach Boys are down to accept all the drugs and women from Manson and listen to his music and record him a little bit and go, that's as far as we're going to go because we know how fucking terrible of a person you are. Obviously, these women are brainwashed.
Yeah.
But they're receptive to the needs. It's the 60s, dog. So no one's getting canceled as far as like taking advantage of brainwashed women from a crazy
LA,
guy.
dude. Everybody's like rocking who they want to be. You know,
it's also the free love movement, so it's kind of even hard to tell who's fucking brainwashed and who's just like peace and love. Let's roll in the mud and fuck.
Literally. So Dennis Wilson basically altered a version of Cease to Exist by Charles Manson, and he created Never Learn Not to Love. And that's what fucking boomed and was on I think it was a single on that record that it was on. And after that, Manson, they like pushed Manson out of the way because they're like, well, you know, we got money off you. Manson like never received a dime off of this. He tried to fight for, I guess, his royalties to it, and he never got anything out of it. They
changed the lyrics, but not the music.
Yeah, they kept like the melody, but they changed the lyrics. Yep.
And took him off the credits entirely. And it was the 60s, so you could do that.
Oh man, he just got fucked everywhere he went.
Yeah, and so the prosecutor.
Go ahead.
The prosecutor of the case, whose name is Vince Bugliosi.
Yeah, heard that.
Who is a character?
We talked about him last week.
He is a character in and of himself. He was basically, he had already committed like crimes or instances that could get him disbarred from being a prosecutor for the county of LA or whatever. But he wanted to run for president. And so the theory is that he was only made the prosecutor because he could be controlled, because the prosecutor's office knew that he had done this crazy thing with a milkman where he like stalked them and got their kid from school. He thought this milkman got his wife pregnant. All right, I'm gonna go off on a tangent. I'm sorry.
You're already there, man.
Yeah, I know.
Wait, didn't you talk about this last week?
No, I don't think I did. Vince Bugliosi thought his milkman got his wife pregnant, so he started stalking his milkman.
Is that where that meme came from?
To the point where probably he picked up the milkman's kid from school, took him to the toy store, and left him on their curb in front of the house with a pile of toys, just to let that kid's parents know, the milkman and his wife, that he could like manipulate their whole fucking family. This all came out before the Manson case, so he didn't get fired, but the DA's office knew that they could like just rail him, Vince Bugliosi. And then later in life, he did more crazy shit. He was kind of a crazy dude. He ran for president, and the reason he didn't get elected is because he was accused of SAing the RAPED word, a lady. She got pregnant, and then he beat her into a miscarriage, and that's why he didn't get elected to this California seat of some type. He's a legitimate crazy dude. He's the prosecutor for the case.
We're not talking about Manson anymore.
Entire Helter.
But this is all. He's the author of Helter Skelter, the greatest true crime book on the fucking planet, and half of it's fucking bullshit.
Well, Chaos is based on Helter Skelter, right?
What'd you say?
No.
Tom O'Neill's book.
No.
I thought Tom
O'Neill wrote the book that's showing how much bullshit the Helter Skelter is. That's written by Vincent Bugliosi, who was the prosecutor of Manson.
Gotcha.
Okay. Exactly. Tom O'Neill interviewed Vincent Bugliosi later in life, and then got like basic bullshit information, and then later it took Tom O'Neill 20 years to make this book. So in the first 10 years, him and Vince are cool, and in the second 10 years, him and Vince are like at odds. And then Vincent Bugliosi dies. But from this story, you learn that Vincent Bugliosi is actually fucking nuts and was lying through the entire prosecution as to the motive behind the murders that Manson and the cult committed, and making up why they did it, but still winning.
Was he the one that was supposed to be the Manchurian candidate? Manchurian candidate?
Manchurian. No.
There was something, I can't remember the guy's name, but there was something that was tied into actually being a legitimate Manchurian candidate. And I thought that was like...
So around the time, maybe a little bit after that Helter Skelter came out, a book called Manchurian Candidate came out. And it was the first kind of exposure to MK Ultra to the world as far as a book length explanation is concerned. But the idea of a Manchurian Candidate comes out of the Korean War, because we had POWs coming back claiming that America had gassed vast lands of Korea, and American scientists claimed that those POWs had been brainwashed. But if you look back through a clearer lens of history, we probably absolutely attacked Korea with biological and chemical weapons. And so we were kind of using the idea of brainwashing. I got into this a little bit last week, but we were using the idea of brainwashing against our enemies while we were doing it before they were doing it.
Well, we thought that they were doing it.
Yeah, and then I think the movie Manchurian Candidate came out, and I think the name that pops to mind when people bring forward the Manchurian Candidate is Sirhan Sirhan, who killed Robert F. Kennedy.
That's the name
but
I kept hearing
off
to
track,
type.
so.
No, dude, it's like such a big fucking picture of tying all this shit together that was going on during the 60s. Like, it seems weird that there's a through line for all of it. And I'll leave it at that. I'm sorry.
Let's hop back on the Manson train. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good, man.
Absolutely.
It's all good information. Let me see. Where did we leave off? Where do we want to get into now? Basically, like where we've been talking. He's been going to Haight-Ashbury, getting all this LSD from Roger Smith. He's committing crimes. I know I mentioned last week that they got him and his followers. They got on the ranch. Oh my gosh, what's it called? Spawn Ranch, right?
Yeah,
it's the ranch they portray in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, right?
Yeah, it is Spawn Ranch. And let's fast forward to the murders themselves, because I think that is an interesting topic as far as like there's not necessarily a motive that we know of for the Sharon Tate murders. The official one is the one that we just expressed from Vince Bugliosi, that he was trying to get back at Terry Melcher, who didn't produce his music. But it is proven in other documents that he had a continuing relationship with this producer after the murders. And that may not necessarily have been the reason.
Because a lot of people were wondering like why he picked the Tate house. And people had said he had been there before. Charles said he had never been there before. He just had told his followers, you need to make it something where people will notice. And guarantee you that they might not have been the first murders. Obviously, like you said earlier, there was other murders that could possibly tie under Charles' belt that he hasn't been accused of. And what if? And so Charles would take all his followers on, like, they would go creepy crawling. I think that's what he said. And they would literally like go stalk houses, and they would break in these houses. They would steal things, like little stupid shit, just like playing their games on their LSD. And he's just like, literally, he creates a world. Charles literally created a world for them. And a simulation, going back to our simulation theory episode. And
holy shit, Drake.
And so he creates a world, and then he's the fucking ruler. He decides exactly what goes down. So he determines, this is what we do today. This is what what you do today. This is what we're going to do. And then, like I said last week, he put that chair in the middle of them, and an empty chair in the circle, and they would all try to act like someone was in the middle, and they would use these fear tactics and try to scare the person that was in the chair, but there was never a person in the chair.
Oh yeah, and you're kind of getting back to what I was talking about, is him learning
stress
from his MK Ultra teachers as to how to manipulate people. But I do want to interject that he had been to that house because he got a ride home from the drummer of the Beach Boys, who dropped Terry Melcher off first. So he had seen the house, and he did know Terry Melcher lived there. And so that lends some credence to the state's argument, or Vincent Bugliosi's argument, that he was only trying to threaten Terry Melcher for not producing him. But if you dig a little deeper, and Tex Watson is an interesting character that we probably don't have enough time to spend on, but the night before the Tate murders, they were at one of the 4 people that was in that spree, other than the baby, so there's technically 5, but one of the other people lived down the hill in a castle, and the night before, someone had cut the cable thinking it was a phone line to that house. The cable was brand new. Like, you had to live there to get cable. You had to be the richest motherfucker ever.
Yeah.
Someone cut the cable TV. That guy calls his electrician and goes, "Hey, my cable's out. Yeah, my lights got real bright for a second. I need you to come over and
because they're trying to watch a movie. Sharon Tate and them, they're trying to watch a movie, and they're with it's Sharon Tate, her ex-boyfriend, who apparently was also gay, and he was like a hairstylist or something really popular in LA.
I thought he was like a movie director.
Roman wasn't even there. Yeah, he was really famous. He was really famous for what he did. I can't remember his exact fucking career.
All 4 of these people are technically, of the time, the who's who in Hollywood. I mean, Sharon Tate to be the pinnacle, but the people she surrounded her with were very known in Hollywood at the time.
Fuck,
so they're all trying to watch a movie. Not to interrupt you, but I'll let you get back into it. But I remember this. They're trying to watch a movie. The movie's not happening. The cable gets shut off. They call the guy to come get it, and he's the one that happens to just be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah, and his police report doesn't happen until the next day because he had a date. So he showed up the next day and went, "This guy called me because the cable was cut," and has a police report that the cable wires are cut. And the theory behind that is that the Tex Watson and the others in the cult went to that house to kill him and only cut the cable. They didn't cut the phone lines. But when they cut the cable, it created a surge in the lights, so they got real bright, and likely Tex got shocked. And so they abandoned. And then the next night, they actually cut Sharon Tate's phone lines and went in and killed them and did the murder. But there's evidence that the night before that they were stalking this group of 4 people. And so that's the motive, that it was to get back at Terry Melcher, the producer, is kind of blown out of the water because there was an attempt the evening before at a different location.
Definitely that, and who was the guy that was just innocent that was hanging out, like he was the gardener or whatever? He was hanging out with the guy at the fence. That's when Tex and them parked the car at the end of the street. When they walked up, they ran up and killed him instantly. They shot him a couple of times. And that's what's so crazy is they come up and shoot him and no one hears this shit.
Yeah.
And they're getting into these murders, and the Tate murders are brutal. I mean, they all stabbed him like multiple times, and so Charles, one thing he said, I remember this. He told all his followers, and he especially told Tex. He goes, make sure every single person, Sadie and the other 2 women that were with him, make sure every single one of these girls gets their hands dirty. Because I need to look it up. One of them didn't even want to commit the murders, but Tex would like hand her the knife, and then she would go and have to stab the victims multiple times. I think Sharon Tate was stabbed over like 36 fucking times. Like, it was
Holy
ridiculous.
Shit.
I think the woman you're talking about is the one who
was it Linda?
No, I think it was Sadie, and she confessed and recanted several times during the trial while they were all like bawled and yelling outside of the courtroom. So
Sadie's story changed, I think, 3 times.
Yeah, I think there's better venues that people like true crime podcasts, maybe that people could dig into like what happened in the murders, not to totally derail that idea, but
You
I
can
think,
get this information other places
yeah.
with
No, there
with
was
way more detail than us, but
there was
I think we
something.
have enough ideas to kind of go. Then the murders happened. There's a conspiracy behind Tex Watson, which we kind of went over earlier.
because
But
he was an honor student. All these people I talked about last week too. Y'all, if anyone hasn't seen last week's episode, go check it out. It's definitely like a prequel to this, and every single murderer that was a follower of Charles had average homes. They had average home lives. They all had high school educations. Some had college educations. They were honor students. Susan Atkins, who Charles called Sadie, I've been calling her Sadie all night. But Susan Atkins, she was a choir girl at church. So, and that's what I said earlier. Remember, so you have all these regular people, like people we hang out with, just normal, everyday people. In 2 years, he gets them to become brutal killers through just drug enthused. Like
the thread they all have in common is that they were interested in the hippie movement and kind of dissociating with the norms of life and joining the free love, free spirited idea of being. But and so Susan Atkins actually has a very like crazy resemblance to who we brought up earlier, which was Charles Manson's fiance later in life while he was in prison. That lady and Susan Atkins look a lot alike. But even the only reason I want to kind of, and not to cut y'all off if y'all want to get into it, but kind of skip the murders is to try and tie all this back into the MK Ultra, the mind control idea of things. And so my whole thought process behind this is I read an entire fucking book of MK Ultra, and it's Audible, so I listened to it. It wasn't that hard, but the book I read and the book you read have very different information. And if Jeremy wants to pull up in content sharing, I posted a YouTube video, and I left a time code so you can pull it up in the watch together, because the author of Chaos, Tom O'Neill, who we brought up
Is it the Concrete podcast?
Yes. He actually talks about the author of the book that I read for last week for the overview of MK Ultra. And he basically calls him a government shill. And I really want to watch that because I love like learning new shit and then going, that's basically shit that the CIA basically put out.
Yeah.
So
here, hold up. All right, I'm ready.
If we can watch that short clip.
I don't have the timestamp. It's a 2-hour video, so help me out.
150.
Very specific.
Timestamp should
appreciate
be directly below the video. 105, I'm sorry. 105.
Well, that's different.
Yeah,
150. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's very different. I'm sorry.
Where's
That's him though.
An LSD around the corner in his
Oh shit, I don't even internet browser.
laboratory disguised as a hippie pad.
I'm not in the watch together.
Who was the parole officer of Manson, had Manson come to the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic where he was working on his own drug research and doing his parole. And it was during those pivotal 2 or 3 months. Manson got out in March of '67. He was just an ex-con. You know, he'd been in prison half his life. He was 32, I think it was 17 years in and out of federal institutions.
For dumb stuff, like stealing cars,
Everything was
robbing
dumb.
grocery stores.
Yeah, and he was never in a county jail except waiting for, federal trials. Yeah, silly stuff. Stealing a car and then taking it across the state line, which makes it federal. The last thing he went to prison for was stealing an envelope from the mail, which made it a federal offense. So if that had been stealing, there was a check for $37 that he cashed.
I gave the wrong time code. This is not correct at all. Try 150, I'm sorry.
Yeah, he definitely, that's like verbatim what he says on JRE.
Now, when you got
holy shit, why is it doing this to me?
Like the last couple exchanges before you publish the book.
I'm doing it, I'm sorry.
I'm controlling 150. You've already there.
I think so.
The Supreme Court overthrew the death penalties in the early
I can't hear
70s, saying it was unconstitutional for anybody,
shit's still
so they
broken, I'm sorry.
suspended the
My
death
out-of-town rig
sentences,
is
and that's
bad.
the only reason none of them were killed by the end of the 70s.
Right.
They all got their sentences commuted to life in prison with possibility of parole.
Right.
But for you to perjure yourself,
The podcast up. Anyways, he talks shit. He talks shit about the author that I read last week for MK Ultra and says, I found all this information about this guy named Jolly West, who was one of the sub projects of Sidney Gottlieb, who ran MK Ultra. And he goes on to say that he thinks that Sidney Gottlieb's book, the one that I read again, was no, Sidney Gottlieb was the subject. I can't remember the author's name. I'm sorry, but that basically this guy who wrote this book about Sidney Gottlieb was a sidecar to the CIA and was allowed to print what they wanted him to print because they knew that shit was going to come out. And he was very skeptical as to why the author I read didn't talk about Jolly West at all. And I mean, it is in the book, but it's not in the end notes. Like, you can't look up anything about Jolly West. He just mentions them passingly, which is why we didn't really talk about him last week. But
Jolly West
after
is the
seeing this
through
part-
line to Ruby, right?
and Manson.
Well,
Through
I'm
MK
saying like
Ultra
that's what
because-
connects JFK, or not JFK, but RFK. Is it
No,
JFK? It's
Ruby
JFK.
is-
It's my bad. Yeah.
JFK, yeah. And we'll get to it, but he also connects RFK. But so Jolly West, I think I said this last week, he was given like a $20,000 lab in Haight-Ashbury around the corner from the parole officer that you've been mentioning, Richard Smith or something like that. Is that his name?
Richard Smith.
Yeah.
Roger.
Roger Smith.
Roger Smith. Okay.
Yeah.
So he's like around the corner from that, running what is essentially Midnight Climax in Haight-Ashbury without the sex. He's just dosing people with LSD, and Manson is going there for psychiatric care through Jolly West. Jolly West is like a through line, and so having Drake's author talk shit about the author that I read about Jolly West, I dug into Jolly West. And
It's so funny that he was talking shit about him.
it caught my ear. I think in public I went like this. Probably on a plane I went like this.
What the fuck?
You guys hearing
and
this
people
shit?
Like it.
No, it's in my headphone.
Yeah.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah. You smell some Scooby snacks, but
Scooby Snacks.
and so Scooby Doo.
Scooby
anyway,
Snacks are never mind.
No, I was talking about Scooby Doo, Jeremy.
I'm talking about Scooby
Anyways,
Snacks.
that's fair. So I dug into Jolly West. It turns out there's another link in there, Jeremy. If you want to pull it up, we should definitely post a link to the other link that I sent. It's an article all about Jolly West. It's the one right above the video. It's cchrint.org.
Hang on. I gotta get all of it.
I'm going to talk about this article while you bring it up.
Go ahead.
This article is all about Jolly West. It turns out that Jolly West, who we talked about this last week, he interviewed Jack Ruby and kind of fucked with Jack Ruby's mind. And Jack Ruby was normal until Jolly West started talking to him. And then he was deemed insane and like couldn't stand trial, got prosecuted, was kind of crazy for the rest of his life. Just so turns out, Jolly West interviewed Timothy McVeigh. Maybe it wasn't an interview. He talked to Timothy McVeigh, the Oklahoma City bomber, 17 times
Holy shit.
in Colorado and Oklahoma City after he was arrested. Was the same doctor assigned to Sirhan Sirhan, the murderer of RFK. This is like the guy actually fucking people. Jolly West seems like the guy who made it work. because you have Manson, who was able to control a cult through the in that article, there's a section where Jolly West writes a paper and says you can control people with LSD. This is how you do it. And like the blueprints of this paper is what Manson did with his family.
So I don't.
He's visiting. Go ahead.
I just want to. I mean, I think it's getting washed over, but there's a through line. You have JFK assassination, RFK assassination. You have Manson. You have Jack Ruby. You have all these people, and then you jump because my understanding, 1995 is the Oklahoma World Trade Center bombings.
Yeah.
This is 30.
No, it's not World Trade Center. It's the Alfred R. Murrow building in Oklahoma City.
Semantics, but I think it's 30 years of activity with this guy that is tying in similar activities, and this is the stuff that blows my mind.
He started in the 50s.
40
he got
years.
government money. He got government money in the late 50s, early 60s, but he started talking to Sidney Gottlieb in like 56 and has just been like rampaging through people's minds. And I think every time you see Jolly West's name, whether it's Sirhan, Timothy McVeigh, Charles Manson, Jack Ruby, he is so integral in so many of these historical occurrences, which are all kind of tied back to MK Ultra through him. And he held several like psychiatric posts that were like well known at, I think, at the University of Oklahoma and then University of California, Berkeley or something. But he was high up in the psychiatric, but he was willing to like fucking ruin people's brains to figure out if he could make a Manchurian candidate. And I think he got the closest. And I think he's the reason RFK is dead. He's the reason Harvey Oswald is dead. He's the reason Manson went the route he did. And like, if you just follow the Jolly West timeline, you can like pinpoint moments in history and reimagine them. And the perpetrator is not really there type of mindset.
The anecdote is Jolly West was the guy we were talking about last week that was Forrest Gump, right?
Did we say that?
Oh, yeah. That was sick. I forgot about that. That's
pretty funny.
No, it is funny because I've read an article today that was like, Jolly West, a Forrest Gump character. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, no, I mean, he's literally involved in the JFK, RFK, the Oklahoma City bombings, the Manson murders, to name a few. And so I think our through line through this is to re-examine Timothy McVeigh in the Oklahoma City bombings, because I also found some information on a police officer for the Oklahoma City Police Department. I think he was a sergeant who had recently been accepted by the FBI and was moving to Irving, Texas from Oklahoma City.
We don't want him.
But no, this is just a bit of a teaser. He raised such a stink at Oklahoma City that he was murdered before he could do it. And it is called a suicide, but I think if you look into it, it's a bit more a murder. And I think if you look a bit more into Timothy McVeigh, you realize that he was a similar victim as far as like the manipulation of his past and the likelihood of him being brainwashed by an MK Ultra type situation. Because he was a special ops member of the army of some sort. I haven't nailed that down, but that's part of the research I was going through the through line from this week. And it all goes through Jolly West, which is like a big character in the Manson stuff. And I would like to keep exploring his the trail of destruction behind him.
Even if you take away Jolly West and you just say it was somebody, just say it was the CIA, like you're tying the CIA into all of this shit. And they are the common variable behind all of these terrible, terrible things. And
and let's keep in mind what I brought up last week, and what Drake kept alluding to, is that there were 149 sub projects of MLK, and Jolly West was one of them.
MK Ultra.
Yeah, MK
Hashtag
Ultra. I'm
MLK
sorry.
Ultra.
God, what a
Where are you
misspeak.
at, Jason?
But and so if he's one of 146, 149, 143, whatever it is, hey Tesla, then let's pretend that he's the best, and so everyone is 5% as effective as he is.
He's the most proficient.
If everyone is 5% as effective as Jolly West, there is an untold amount of MK Ultra mishaps and Manchurian candidates.
And then you have to go to as far as saying, like, if it's something that we've heard about, if it's something that the public is aware of, like, that is the top of the iceberg. There's so much shit that you don't hear about that's probably exponentially worse, right? Like, the stuff we know about is stuff that they're probably like, we could probably let that go. Like, they could probably handle that. But the shit they want to keep secret that we'll never hear about is so much far worse, in my mind.
And
which is astounding because this shit is blowing my mind of how crazy this is.
Yeah, let me get this last thread out, and then we'll do plugs, and we'll go on to Timothy McVeigh next week. But
hell yeah,
we're doing a whole
that'd be cool, man. I'm
Timothy
excited
McVeigh.
to look into that.
All right, yeah.
It's just an idea I'm toying with, but I'm going to give you the through line, and I think it'll make sense through last week and through this week. So, last week you studied LSD, Jeremy, and you brought up serotonin and psilocybin and LSD all in one picture, and they were somewhat similar as far as the structure of the molecules and the chemicals.
Yeah.
And I have no basis to back this up, but I am going to start looking into it. But it frightens me that LSD had such an effect on so many people, and the CIA used it so effectively, as far as it had a large impact, ineffectively as it. Who knows if it created a Manchurian candidate? Sirhan's probably the best example of that. It did create a Manchurian candidate, but past that. So if serotonin is like the base structure of LSD, essentially chemically, then let's pretend MK Ultra never ended, in that serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SSRIs, are a furtherance of LSD. Why should I not expect the CIA to use SSRIs the same way they use LSD, and maybe more effectively?
I know where you're going with it, and I want to get in front of you. I know where you're going. I want you to make your point, but just to allude to what we talked about last week, to my point, my basis of understanding is serotonin is the primary driver of what you experience as reality. Like, your day-to-day function is based primarily on serotonin. Like your general experience of reality is based primarily on serotonin. So the point that I think you're trying to make, like, if they start
you're trying to make your brain release serotonin.
If they start introducing these SSRIs and they're just commonplace, like you could go into any psychiatrist, any medical person that's prescribing this stuff, and it's their first immediate reaction, like, let's put you on SSRIs, let's put you in CTB therapy and all this stuff.
Well,
that's
let me provide the context that I've taken LSD recreationally years ago in college. And I had a very positive experience, so I wouldn't put it past anyone to take an SSRI and it better their life. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there is a possibility to take advantage of people with these drugs, and I think a common through line through SSRI specifically is mass shooters. And I haven't connected threads, but I think there might be threads to be connected, and if that is of any interest, we have Sirhan and Timothy McVeigh, and if we wanted to dig further into Jack Ruby and just really expose Jolly West, I'm all for it. But I'm going to keep in the back of my head that there might be a through line that serotonin is the new MK Ultra drug.
No, I'm on board, and I think we need full disclosure that this stuff is. I mean, it is helpful. It's super beneficial to a vast majority of the population. Like, I'm not trying to like discourage anybody from going that route if it's something that's helpful in your life, 100%. But if we're taking the route of MK Ultra and they're just furthering the furthest extents of these experiments, right? Like maybe they finally found like the most efficient route to it and the most like easily accessible route to it. How do we mess with people's brain chemistry? And they've not stumble, but like it's years and years of development. They finally settle on SSRIs. Like we could control the amount of serotonin in these people's heads and like trigger certain Manchurian candidates and trigger these mass shooting events and stuff like that.
Well, and the graph you brought up had 3 drugs on it, and it was SSRIs, serotonin specifically. Sorry, serotonin, and it was psilocybin, and it was LSD, and 2 of those are illegal, and one of them is like just go to the doctor and you can get it.
100%.
If you tell me, if you can Google the right things to say to get it, and so that is kind of what it kind of ties back into big pharma and the like my fear of manipulation from powers that I will never obtain and have no desire to, but people do wield. And so that's kind of the through line I'm thinking. I like I said, I haven't connected threads, but I will be looking into it. But I think next week, if we tackle Timothy McVeigh and the Oklahoma City, there's a lot of interesting stuff there. I think we'll have a bountiful podcast too.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
I think it's an interesting take, and I think it's a novel. I don't want to say it's novel, but like even in the stuff that I was trying to research, like I was not finding anything on it except for like 1 or 2 articles on trying to tie in what I was trying to tie into. So that's my point, trying to say some of this stuff might be novel, and maybe we'll attract some viewers from it. But I think it's an interesting take.
And your point on this episode, which I fear we kind of boxed you out of, which it was that they used Manson to demonize the hippie movement, which I think they absolutely did. And
I mean, I touched on it last episode.
We didn't hit there.
I touched on it last episode for sure. There's not much to it. I didn't have. I did like as much research as I could. Like I said, I only found 1 or 2 articles backing my idea of it, but the primary thought was that LSD was supposed to be this mind-altering drug, and like my take was that you had this upper white-collar class kind of partaking in this LSD treatment, and it's the people that are in positions of power to actually make real tangible change, right? And so the government, I don't even want to say the government, but whatever the powers that be, the military complex, whatever it is, like got scared, and they're like, how do we shut this down? How do we like scare people away from this miracle drug? And it was, well, let's tie in literally the devil to it. Like, let's associate it with the devil. And then you have an entire generation, the 80s and 90s, that grew up associating LSD with Manson. They're thinking, oh shit, if I take LSD, I'm going to end up a serial killer and like Manson and all this shit, which to me is perverted and fucking gross, man.
I mean, to add on to that, I mean, even like just the rumor that you'll get like LSD flashbacks, like it'll hit it'll hit your spine or your brain column, and you'll have another trip. And at the time, I was like, hell yeah, I would love to be 40 and trip on accident. But like that's probably not even true. So there is a whole.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's another disclosure too.
And
like
I heard that it was, but I mean, yeah, I don't know.
That's another thing we need to be careful about too. I'm not encouraging anybody to go out and try this like on a whim or anything. It's powerful, mind-altering stuff. And if you're in a bad place, if you're having anxiety or anything like that, all this drug is going to do is enhance that experience, and that's where the bad trips come from. I'm an advocate that there's no such thing as bad trips. Like, it's something that you need to experience and work through, and that's where you introduce therapy and going and kind of seeking counsel and dealing with it. But that's something that your consciousness is telling you that you need to deal with. And if you're just putting it on the back burner and you take this LSD trip and you have a bad trip, that's a signal that it's something that you need to deal with 100%. Don't take this stuff on a whim. Before I ever experimented with any kind of psychedelic drug, I went through extensive research, and I know that sounds crazy to think, like me personally, but fucking do your research, man. Don't think that this is gonna cure you. In any case, I think it's gonna amplify any negative feeling you're gonna feel. So don't think you just take this miracle drug and it's gonna change your life. Like, it's not what's gonna happen.
I think the real goal is to come to some type of like realization or reality about yourself and about the world that you're in, and then when you can maintain that state on your own and then you take it can open doors. You have to be in that place to where and again, I'm not advocating it. I'm just saying, like, if you find yourself in a good place, that might be the best time to do it. If you find yourself in a bad place, that also might be the time to do it. But let's be honest, you're probably gonna have a bad trip. And,
like I said, there's no such thing as a bad trip. It's therapeutic. Yeah. It's like the ego death.
The only like argument I could say towards that is like Charles Manson having shit cards dealt him his whole life, who could just be 100% negative at all times. When he started trying LSD, he loved it. And I mean, he was in a really bad place at a bad time. He was homeless at 12 and thrown out so many times from everybody, but he still found love through it. I'm not saying you will if you're in a negative spot, but it kind of just argues your bad trip thing, because you don't have to be in a shitty situation in life to have a bad trip on LSD.
No, that's like true, you have to register it as, like, I'm not saying there's no such thing as a bad trip. Like, you have to register it as that. Like, acknowledge what it is. Like, Manson probably fed into it. Like, oh, this is just reinforcement for what I'm already feeling. Like, you need to check it. It's the ego death. Like, you have to experience it.
The best and most unbiased word that you can place towards it is revelatory. And like, revelations in the Bible is obviously known to be like crazy bad. It's the end of the world type things. But then you have your own personal revelations that help you or whatever. And it can literally be either. It can be as bad as the worst stories at the end of the Bible, or it can be as good as like, oh, maybe I understand this about myself now. And the weirdest part is that through the trip, again, this was college, but through the trip, you're there, but you're so in your own head. Secret time. The first time I did it, I was a junior in college, and I videotaped myself while I was doing it. And I deleted the video because I was just mumbling. And like, I would mumble and then go, and then comes some crazy realization that I couldn't remember, and then I watch comic books on my wall or whatever. It was insane. But like the weaker, I felt like I knew more about myself, even though I didn't remember anything. And I think if I was in a real bad place, that would have been a real bad time. I would have been mumbling crazy shit and saw literal Satan on my wall. But it's not to promote or denounce. It's just to like kind of explain. But either way, I think this is the end of the podcast, and we should do plugs and get out of here, and give a hearty shout out to Twipper, who has been just fucking killing it in chat tonight.
Twipper, we welcome you, man. You are part of the family now, so definitely chime in, man. We welcome you. I don't want to say drugs in general or a through line for this show, but I mean, psychedelics are most definitely something that we've touched on multiple times that is very dear to us. I'll say that.
I was going to say one of his comments is making me go to our YouTube and watch the War on Drugs episode we did. I think it's the first one that's actually on YouTube.
Yeah, it is. Don't judge us for the first don't judge us now, because we're still learning every freaking show. But our first few shows, I can't imagine. I need to go back and watch those and see how bad I was.
Let's do plugs, and we'll see you back here next Tuesday at 7, and we'll talk about the Oklahoma City bombing. We'll probably talk about LSD at the end too.
Who's going first?
I'll go first. Thank you all so much for tuning into this show. If you want to follow me, I've been kind of active on my Twitter. It's Inked Beats, all one word, INKDBEATS. You can follow me on YouTube, subscribe to me on there. Instagram, Twitch on here. I have a band. It's called Able Delilah.
They're
Go
in the
check out our
background.
music. Hell yeah, that's the music in the background. What song is it?
This is Capital Z.
We have a new song called Flavor. That's our most recent one. We have a show this Saturday in Arlington, Texas, if anyone can make it out. Information for that is on our website or on our social medias. Able Delilah. Thank you.
Dope. I'm BOC Wasabi on Twitch. I don't stream very often. Twitter, Instagram. I have a TikTok. Don't follow BOC Wasabi. Go to YouTube and The Rolling Third, all one word. We stream every Sunday at 8 p.m. It's like a movie trivia game night type situation. This Sunday is the Super Bowl, so we're doing a special Super Bowl episode. And that's where you can see everything I'm doing. We have a Patreon. Go follow that. It's only $1.
I'm actually a member of that Patreon, but I'm a top tier $5 benchmark.
Hell right.
I am Jeremy, aka BOC Molasses. You can find me on Twitch. That's about it. I stream occasionally. I do music because I could say that now. I've got one up there. It's kind of boring. Obviously, music production, it's not monotonous, but you can watch that kind of see the production of the song. The waiting screen, the intro is all me. I'm taking credit for it. I don't give a shit, but that's my music. So if you're interested in that, definitely check that out. I do play video games through Twitch, occasionally BOC Molasses. But primarily, I'm here every Tuesday night consistently. Every Tuesday night, 7 o'clock. I think we have a merch store somewhere in there I'm plugging. I don't know where.
FunnyNutFurios.com.
Yeah, man.
You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram.
It's out there, but it's part of those links up there up top. But follow that. Merch is very much overpriced, but we get a very small portion of that. Most of it is directly related to the producing of the said product. So you're just literally buying a sweater. Yeah.
Yeah, it all goes to Teespring. Just rep us if you want to share us. I was going to say something else. Go sub to our YouTube if you haven't. We have way more Twitter subs than YouTube subs, and all these reposts to YouTube and Rumble. Hopefully the next day. This last one took us a little longer because I had to edit it, and I'm a piece of shit, so I apologize for that. But last week's episode is up on YouTube now, too.
Yeah, if you missed it live, if you're watching this right now on YouTube a week later, we welcome you to Twitch. We could use the followers on Twitch kind of just to grow our channel and kind of grow the audience, but if you're watching this on YouTube, again, follow us on Twitch, like, subscribe, all that shit. I hate saying it, but it does help us out. It
does. Thank you.
Spread the information. But live, Tuesdays at 7, here, the three of us, every Tuesday.
Join our Discord if you want to send us links and shit too. Will you hit that social and then we'll finally leave and quit plugging shit.
Discord is open to everybody. You guys can join that. Like, if you want us to talk about anything specific, just drop it in there somewhere. I can't remember the channels, but just put it in there. We'll definitely research it, talk about it if it's relevant to that week's episode. We try to stay on top of current events. Obviously, we're missing the State of the Union, but we'll catch up on that and talk about it next week on current events.
Yep. See you next week. Love you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.